10 seconds, 5 seconds. Start. Participating in the convocation of the Bombay University, the President of India said, I deem it both an honor and a privilege to participate in the convocation of this great university, one of the three oldest in India, especially when I recall the great men who have addressed its convocations in the past. When your learned Vice Chancellor invited me to this function, I readily agreed because it has always been a pleasant and stimulating experience for me to meet young men and women engaged in the pursuit of knowledge and discovery. As I grow older and tend to drift further away from direct contact with education, the pleasure of such meetings become even greater. I therefore feel very grateful to your Vice Chancellor and the members of your university for giving me this opportunity to spend some time in your midst. To you, my young friends who have received their degrees and distinctions today, I offer my warm felicitations. I wish you a purposeful and a happy life in a service of our country and in the never ending pursuit of learning and excellence. Please remember that education does not end with graduation. It was never so even in the past and in the modern world in which knowledge is growing at a phenomenal pace. A university degree indicates only the arrival of the student at the threshold of knowledge. There is only one humor but profound wisdom in the story of the young graduate who was asked to learn the rest of the alphabets when he said to the world that he has completed his education and he is a BA. On an occasion like this, I cannot but think of our educational system, its needs and problems, strengths and weaknesses, our achievements and promises, and you will pardon me if I take a few minutes to share with you some thoughts that are uppermost in my mind at present. One readily grants the significance of education as an academic discipline which helps man to march forward in his long quest for truth and excellence. But a debate is often raised about the individual, the social aims of education. It must be remembered, however, that the relationship between the individual and the society is really mutual and complementary. The development of individual enriches and improves society, and a well organized, free, and just society provides greater opportunities for the individual to grow. In certain situations, however, a greater emphasis has to be deliberately laid on the social purposes of education, and education has to be used as an instrument for social change. This is especially so in developing country like ours. The tasks which we have set before ourselves are as formidable as they are noble. We want to raise our standard of living substantially and to assure a minimum income to each family or at least to each planned family. We want to create a new social order based on justice, equality, freedom, and the dignity of the individual. We want to adopt modern science and technology and side by side develop a sense of social responsibility and generate moral and spiritual values based on the own great traditions and the valuable contributions of other cultures. This is not an utopian or even an over ambitious program. It is the minimum needed for an honorable national existence. In implementing it, we can have no greater ally than education, which is the most powerful instrument of national development. What we need most urgently, therefore, is revolution of education, which can trigger off the cultural, economic, and social revolution we need. Why is it that we have not yet been able to spark off this revolution, the need and importance of which are universally granted even after so many years of independence? The failure is certainly not due to lack of knowledge. Most of our great leaders were also great educationalists. They have said so much about education and given such valuable guidelines that a vigorous and sustained implementation of even a fraction of their teachings would have done the trick. I also refuse to believe, although the argument is more plausible, that this was due to lack of finance. I do not think that any country can be so poor that it cannot give work and fair education to all its people. Nations often get into a vicious circle in which they cannot educate their people because they are poor, and they continue to remain poor because they cannot provide good education to all their citizens. But such vicious circle can be and have been broken through dedication and human effort. If we had these in adequate measure, lack of funds would have not barred our progress. I would be personally inclined to attribute this failure to the absence of the proper type of educational leadership. Ideas are important, no doubt, but they cannot be effective unless there is an adequate number of competent and dedicated individuals who can stand behind them and help them to take root to grow the flower and to bear fruit. Money is indeed important, but it cannot necessarily create such workers. The crucial resource needed is the right type of leadership, and if exist, the required funds will be found or ways would be found to achieve the desired objectives even with meager material resources. The large scale reconstruction of national life, which we envisage, can be achieved only with the help of an intelligent of adequate size and competence and of deep commitment, the service of the masses, and the development of the nation. Its size is important if an impact is to be made on the people as a whole. Its competence is of greater significance, especially the modern world of rapidly expanding knowledge and quick social change. But most important of all is its close affinity with the masses of people and its commitment to national development. It is only the universities which can provide this leadership, and if they can do so, all difficulties which now loom large on the horizon and seem to hinder our progress will vanish like darkness at sunrise. That is why the aim of university education, in fine, should be turn out true servants of the people. Stop.